Hello, everyone, and happy Saturday. Welcome back to another episode of the Everyday Leader Live series. I am here today with two amazing orthopods and humanitarians, Mr. Alwyn Abraham and Mr. Richard Power. Mr. Alwyn Abraham is a consultant trauma and orthopedic surgeon at the University Hospital of Leicester. He specializes in adult and pediatric trauma with expertise in circular frame fixation. He has co founded the Leicester Gonder Orthopedic Partnership, which has led to the development of an orthopedic department that is currently providing services for a catchment population of about 7 million people. He also holds wider responsibilities, including being the training program director for trauma and orthopedics and FRCS trauma and orthopedics examiner. And he's also a chairman elect of the World Orthopedic Concern. My other guest is Mr. Richard Power, who is also a consultant orthopedic surgeon for over three decades now, with extensive experience in hip and knee arthroplasty, specifically revisions. He has been the driving force behind the Leicester Gonder Orthopedic Partnership, and he currently chairs the Health Action Leicester for Ethiopia. We will start with Mr. Alwyn, and we'll be joined by Mr. Richard in a little bit as he's currently traveling. So, Mr. Alwyn, I'll call you Alwyn because it'll be weird. Alwyn, thank you for coming to the Everyday Live. I'm so excited to be having this conversation with you and Richard. We've known each other, we've collaborated on projects together, and we've known each other on personal level as well. So I'm really excited and thankful for you being here, and welcome.
Thank you very much, Ananya. It's a pleasure to be here to renew acquaintances. We've known each other for the best part of 10 years now. So, and it's great to be part of the journey of your journey, and also be part of the progress of TNO in Ethiopia and Gondar very specifically.
Yes, for sure. Um, so we're gonna start off easy, and the theme of our discussion here today is obviously the everyday leader. So when you hear that statement or that phrase, what does it mean to you in the context of the work you do in your home base and also across the ocean?
I would say that a leader is essentially someone who is absolutely comfortable in his own skin. To lead other people, you have to be able to lead yourself from a place where you have potential to a place where you are able to fulfill your potential. And um, in one sense, that's a really easy statement to make. On the other hand, that's a really complex statement to make with multiple layers, and the factors at play here are yourself, your skills, your knowledge, your attributes, the people around you, because it's impossible to grow into a better version of yourself without
Mm,
people around you who build you up, who genuinely have your best interests at heart, who will give you feedback both good and bad. And then finally, there is very much a case that opportunities arise
Mm.
without necessarily you knowing that they will come along, but you happen to be at the right time, right place. And my favorite example of that is, if I could use a historical example of Mikhail Gorbachev, who was the last president of the Soviet Union. He was number 4 in the pecking order. You know,
Mm.
he was a lovely, nice man. He had a beautiful marriage to someone called Raisa. He played the piano. He had no intention of being president, but before you knew it, in 3 months, 3 Soviet Union presidents passed away, one very quickly, one after the other. He was elected president, and the rest is history. Okay, we might not approve of much of what's happening in the Soviet Union now, or the former
Mm.
Soviet Union, but yeah, he brought the wall down. He reconciled Russia to the rest of the world, and I use that as an example of someone who's at the right place at the right time. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't necessarily believe in luck. Sorry, this is a slight aside, but I
No,
think
go ahead.
um, luck is luck is a phrase we often use, but it's when capabilities and opportunities meet at the same time
Mhm.
and something phenomenal happens, and I think that is what most people would describe as luck. So yes, just to hopefully to summarize my answer before I went on a detour, I think it's a combination of you yourself, your own personal journey of you, your heart, your mind, secondly the people around you, and then being at the right place at the right time.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've mentioned so many important points. What a leader is, and like anything, like you said, it's a habit. Like you have to practice being a leader every day in what you do. Um, and that's what makes a leader a good leader versus somebody who have not succeeded in being a leader. So um, practice does make perfect, and having the right people around you that can boost you, lift you up, and support you, and even sometimes inspire you to become a leader are very important. So those are great points, and love the example. Very there's so much to learn from that example. Thank you for sharing that. So you have an amazing track record of collaboration, whether it's in UK or in Ethiopia. So where did that quality come from? Was it? Do you think it's innate? Do you think you learned it when you were young? And what other personal qualities do you have that has helped you achieve the level of impact that you currently possess?
Can this be a two-way conversation? Can I ask you a question back in return?
No,
Is,
I
is that not allowed? No, no, because I will. I'd like to make a point by asking you a question,
okay,
and
go
and
ahead.
that is, can I ask you? Can you remember when you were maybe at high school, and can you remember when you were thinking about what you wanted to do with your life, and then can you think about maybe you decided to apply for medicine, to study medicine? What can I ask you, why you studied medicine? Why did you choose medicine? And it might be a very simple answer, like there was no other choice or I was pushed into it. It might be, but I'm just curious.
Um, well, obviously, there's the parent part that
Uh-huh.
we probably both have
Yeah,
in
yeah.
common. uh, but I really, I used to watch my older brother at the time he was in med school. So he used to, I see him reading books. And I saw him reading surgical books. And I'm like, wait a minute, you can open up a person and actually look inside them and do something to help them. I'm like, oh my God, I love this. That's what I want to do.
Okay.
So to become a surgeon, I had to be a medical doctor. Obviously, it's not a step you can skip, but it has always been since I was very young. I've always wanted to help people. I've always had that drive. So I used to treat my cats, my pets, when they got injured and stuff like that. So it has always been in me to help others and, things like that. So I don't know
And,
if that
and
answers your
yeah,
question.
that is a perfect answer. And you said I wanted to help people, and you found something that combines your love or your curiosity of science
Yeah.
and you put that together with something that could help people. And
Mhm.
I would say 90% of doctors, when they start medical school, they will give you a very simple, sorry, similar answer.
Mm.
I think the sad thing is that somewhere along the way, that passion either changes,
Mm.
or it, I don't know, it gets damaged,
Mm.
or perhaps it gets burnt out. I mean, that's a word that's used
Mm-hmm.
quite a lot.
Yep. Yep.
Um, but I think I'd say I am extremely fortunate that I had exactly the same motivation as yourself to push myself in a scientific field,
Mm.
but also to use that for the good of people who needed me.
Mm.
There was an altruistic streak there, and
Mm.
I'm so proud, so happy to be able to say I still have that.
Mm.
And you know, um, I think it's a really wonderful thing that you can look at yourself in the mirror and say, do you know what? At the age of 56, I am the person that I wanted to be at the age of 18.
Oh wow.
And that is so I think if the answer to your question, why do you do this, it's because it's become my identity.
Mm.
It's not just something I want to do, it is me.
Mm-hmm.
It is, when I hope that when I leave this planet, people will people will think, oh, he's the guy, yeah, he was interested to help people. Yeah.
Mm.
He was interested in his work. He wanted to be a doctor, and you know what? He wanted to help people. That would do me, and that's probably why I'm doing what I do.
Yeah, I mean, for a 56-year-old young man, you have done a lot, that's for sure.
It's all plastic surgery.
Right. Ah, that is fantastic. And, you're right. You usually have these things within you when you were young. And when you were young, it sounds kind of maybe stupid at the time because you're like, what do I know? Right. But it's those things that eventually grow into something big if you keep nourishing them and if you keep building on it. So, it's a beautiful thing that you are living your authentic life, an authentic life. And
That's a nice word, authentic. Yeah,
yeah, so I mean, and anybody who has met you can attest to that because you're authentic as a person. I know you, and I think that's also your gift when it comes to creating collaboration, when it comes to bringing people together, because people can see that you have no other agenda other than one thing, which is what can we do to help others. So, and I think that's what you bring people together around when
that's very
you.
kind of you. Thank you. I mean, those are very kind words that you say. But I just wish to um, say that it's come with practice, like you said at the start. Leadership is practice, and anything that you want to be, even to live an authentic life, it takes practice.
Yeah.
You don't just go from 18 to 25 and there you will have it,
Hmm.
an authentic life. It's you. Number one, you have to choose it. You have to want to be that person. Number two, you have to have the skills, attitudes, knowledge to be that person. And then, as I said at the start, you have to have the right people and the right circumstances when it all comes together. And
Yeah,
I'm very fortunate in that way, so I'm grateful.
very true, very true. um so you know uh, beyond your clinical work, and I know you enjoy practicing orthopedics, I've seen you in action. um, you actively champion initiatives to support marginalized groups, such as the development of Trust Foundation Doctors Program for international medical graduates. So, what really motivates you to focus on marginalized groups or underserved groups, and what impact have you seen by your involvement in such projects?
So, I mean, if I could just give you a potted history of my own family history.
Mhm.
So my parents are originally from South India. India, as you know, a majority Hindu country. It has about 80% Hindu, maybe about 15% Muslim, and then the other communities form a very, very small part of India. So I'm from the southern part of India. We are from a Christian community. So within that 1 billion people, we are like 1%, one
Mm,
and a half percent. We are a very small proportion.
mm,
So I knew what it feels like to be a marginalized person. I knew what it feels like to be the minority when I
mm,
grew up. We had different names. Many Indian people can't even spell or say my name, even though
mm,
we're the same from the same country. It's as
mm.
basic as that because they're
Interesting.
not familiar with the types of names Christians have.
Mm,
They wouldn't be familiar with what my beliefs might be, what my faith might be.
mm.
They wouldn't know what my customs or even what I eat. Them it might be different.
Wow.
So from the very basics of life, when you grow up in a minority community, mean that you are conscious of being an other.
Mhm,
You know what it feels like to be an outsider. And very fortunately our community does very well in India. The Christian community is very well educated, very very productive when it comes to education, teaching, training, medicine, and the like.
mhm,
A very high rate of female, for instance, female graduates, very high literacy rate. So our community is very progressive. So I'm
mm,
very proud to be from that background.
mm,
But nonetheless, I'm very conscious of what it feels like to be living in a community, in a society, in a country
mm,
where you are the minority. So I would say a lot of my, and it's interesting. You say, why do you do this? And that's a really interesting question. Why do professionals in our at our stage of life, why do we develop pet projects? Why do we develop pet
mhm,
passions? Why do we develop pet, um, uh, you know, uh, causes to support? And a lot of it comes way back from what we've experienced as children, perhaps in some
mm,
cases. And I'd say
mhm,
that is it for me. That I
mhm.
was very fortunate to have that experience of growing up in a minority community, and that's what's driven me to support marginalized causes, and that includes working with the development of orthopedics in Ethiopia, and also
Mhm.
then pursuing projects in the UK and the NHS, where I feel that certain groups, uh, certain parts of the workforce might be underrepresented.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. First of all, thank you for the history lesson over there. But it's interesting. It comes from such a personal experience. Everything you do comes from such a personal experience, and um, you know, having adversity in life, some can make the most out of that adversity and come on the other side and use it to help others, to empathize, to make change, or you can be a victim of it and don't do much with it, right? So you've taken the high road and you have used it to do great works that have probably profoundly impacted people, beyond what you can imagine. So
Well,
it's
you're
really
very kind to use the phrase "great." I wouldn't say great. I'd say reasonably big, or
no,
you could
it's
say
really
needy. But I wouldn't. Great. Great is what something like maybe like Alexander the Great. He did something great, or something like that. But it's very kind of you. Anyway, sorry
yes, but
to.
no, you're good. But I'm thinking for a patient who walks in needing your help, somewhere that they could probably never access your expertise, and then you're there to do that for them, and they walk away better. You change their entire the entire course of life that they're gonna have and things like that. So for that one person, you are Alexander the Great, to be honest. So don't downplay
Okay,
it.
I wish there was an emoji here that I could find. I'm not finding it.
Oh God. All right. It's been great. So Richard has joined us. Hi Richard, welcome.
Hi, Nanya. Hi, Owen.
Hi,
So,
Richard.
am I unmuted? Am I? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Apologies first of all for late joining. I've just travelled down from Scotland. Was up at a concert in Edinburgh Castle last night. I now do, which is so just got off the train. And it's great to be here. And over to you, Ananya. You asked me. Far away.
Yes, great to have you here. It's been a while. It's like a bunch of friends coming together. I'm so happy about this. Um, so I'm gonna go back and ask you the first question that I asked Alwyn. We are here on the Everyday Leader, LinkedIn Live. So what does that phrase mean to you when you hear the phrase the Everyday Leader, and what does it mean to you in the context of your work, the work you do at home and the work you do in Africa as well? Can you hear me, Richard?
It looks like he might be frozen.
Yeah.
Is that a common thing on your on your show? And then you have to ad lib as people
All right.
recover their Wi-Fi.
Am I back? Am I back?
Okay.
Am I back?
You're
Yes,
back.
you're back. You're back.
What did I miss? What did you miss?
The
Did
question.
you did you hear the question?
Yeah, I heard the question. Yeah, so
You're a great. If you haven't heard the question, Richard, you could just give any answer and it'll be right.
no. So when I was on the trip, it was about basically what constitutes leadership in the day-to-day in your day-to-day working life. And I was thinking about this on the train on the way down, and I think it's often useful to choose a letter from the alphabet and think of all the words starting with that letter that make up what you feel sums up that word. So I came up and I chose C, and I came up with actually quite a long list of words beginning with C that are the good things, the good attributes to leadership, and the words beginning with C that actually you should avoid.
Mhm.
And there are no particular order, but I think consistency. So I
Mhm.
think if you're involved in leading any group, whatever it is, you have to show a consistent approach to everything you do. You cannot afford 1 minute to make a decision that biases in one direction and then the next day biases in the other, because then those that you're leading simply don't know where they stand.
Mm.
Confidence. I think you have to show that you have confidence in your own abilities and also in the abilities of your team. And I mean, I suppose these are things that go back to I did spend time in the military as a doctor, and these are all things that are drummed into you then.
Mm.
Compassion, and I think compassion is also really important. You have to understand where weaknesses might lie within your team and how you might understand those and support them. Communication, I think this is the big C.
Mm.
Communication is absolutely vital. You have to be able to not only transmit, but you must listen. You have to be able to listen to those about you. It's no good just being on permanent transmit mode.
Mm.
Um, Creativity. Now, I think this is a word that I think it's being able to think beyond the narrow confines of a process that may be dictated to you. So you
Mm.
have to be able to think, well, actually, this is the standard approach, but it clearly is not working. How are we going to get around that? So you
Mm.
have it's that ability to think beyond that. Cooperation, and I think that what we're talking about today is an absolute classic example
Mm.
of the ability to cooperate with other groups and other teams. Courage is the courage sometimes to make the difficult decisions.
Mhm.
The courage to say, well, actually, I'm sorry, this is wrong. We've got to do this differently. We've got to come at it from a different angle.
Mm.
collaboration. That's, I suppose, just another way of saying cooperation. Critical thinking as opposed to criticism. So I think
Hmm.
critical thinking is you've got to have the ability. It's very easy, particularly in our field.
Mm.
You're brought up with a with
Algorithm.
with an algorithm or whatever it is. Oh well, this is the way we've always done it, and therefore it
Dogma.
must be
Yeah.
right.
Mm.
And you think, well, actually, no, it's the thing. Say, stop. We must look at this. Is this really correct way to do things? And then I've got one or two negative C's. So control. Now, control, yes, you have to have a degree of control within a leadership environment, but over
Mm.
controlling actually, if you're not careful, can alienate your team. Coercion, again,
Mm.
similarly, avoiding putting undue pressure on people to reach your own ends, which may not be the ends of the team itself. Um,
Mm.
Cynicism, I think, is another attribute that should be avoided, and criticism, being critical of people unnecessarily. I think so. And I think that those cover up most of the attributes that I would say with going to be a going to being a day-to-day leader.
Mm.
I ran out of C's when I got to York, I'm afraid, on the train. Um, so I don't know what you think about that.
Oh my God, that's you've put it extremely well. I mean, there's nothing more to say about this. I was taking notes as you were speaking because every single thing you mentioned is on point, and those are all the qualities that makes a leader a good leader, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I love how you put it. And I was thinking while you were speaking, he should write a book on leadership because you seem like you got gems to share. So um, I'm really happy that you shared that with us. Uh, so you have decades of leadership experience, way beyond me and even Alwyn. Uh, how has leadership evolved over the years in your perspective? When you started out back then, a couple of decades back versus now, and how has your personal leadership style evolved along with it?
I think what has changed definitely over the last 20 years within the NHS environment is that the the constraints of leadership are far, far greater than they used to be.
Mm.
So when I first took on being a clinical director, and which would be about 25 years ago, I suppose, um, um, I had really quite a lot of influence. I had quite a lot of responsibility, but I also had um, the ability to be able to make things happen. And I had my own budget, and I could. And as times of, and I've done 3 blocks over my consultant career as a clinical leader. And on each occasion, it's got steadily more difficult
Mm.
because you are constrained by so much more in terms of uh, noise is off. Um, people, the computer says no approach. The
Mm.
and oh, there's no money, or there's no, you can't do this because,
Mm.
rather than that sounds like a really good idea. Yes, let's do it.
Mm.
And I suppose that's what I found um, uh, so sort of heartening about doing our project was actually we achieved something. We had a clear goal. What was the goal? The goal was to create and support the development of an orthopedic trauma unit in an environment which was uh, massively deprived, where there really wasn't anything uh, um, there in the first place, but would then um, provide a sustainable solution for
Mm.
millions of people. And and also you going back to the C's again, collaboratively, and in a way that there were a number of stakeholders who all felt they had something to gain from this, and obviously, most importantly, Gandhi University Hospital. But so I think I found it, and I think one of the main problems we have in the Western working environment is that we've got ourselves bogged down with far too much regulation, noise, and what I would refer to as, we have a term called bog snorkeling. So it's the equivalent of having a diving snorkel, but having to go through a bog. So you or in medical terms, a sclerotic artery, where the red cells are having to fight to get their way through, anything. So I think that's how I think things have evolved, and evolved probably within our environment in a negative direction.
Oh wow, what an interesting take. I'm completely surprised
Yeah.
by this
I've got a
because
question for Richard, if I may.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
So in some ways, that change that you mentioned, Richard, is that not just I can't comment on societies in Ethiopia and America, but do you not, in some ways, not see that that is a change in how society views leadership, how society wishes to be managed in the workplace?
Oh, absolutely, and I think and it's not just the UK. I mean, I think this is an issue with uh, uh, um, Western civilization generally. Is that um, the leadership is almost seen to be
Bad
bad.
thing.
It's a negative. It's seen negatively.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I would say
and
it's not.
prepare to be
It's
knocked
they
down.
just the expectation is just a very different kind of leadership.
Yeah.
So I think I think what you allude to in your early years, especially, is a very kind of command and control type leadership where there is one leader and messages diffuse down. And that is very difficult now because people now expect inclusivity, people expect openness, people expect
Mhm.
management to listen upwards, etc., etc. It's a very different generation that we're
Yeah.
dealing with, and hence there has to be a very different type of leadership style.
Yeah. It's a much more intuitive balance you have to adopt. Um, and it's a very, very fine balance because
Yeah,
it takes very little to upset it one way or the other,
absolutely.
and then because um, the modern ways of communication and social media and the internet generally, um, small uh, uh, perceived deviations from the way it should be very rapidly get magnified out of all perspective,
Mm.
and
It's very
leadership
easy to
is
be
very,
sidetracked, isn't it?
yeah, and leadership is it's much more what's much you're much more likely to be undermined, if by if there's somebody there who wants to undermine you, it's that they have much more power to do so.
And was that less likely in the golden bygone era, being undermined?
I think so, definitely. I mean, when I started in 1995 as a consultant, the internet had literally just had just arrived on the scene, and I can remember. My office at Glenfields, the chap from IT came to put in a computer with a. I thought, what on earth am I going to do with this? He said, "No, you have an email address." I said, "What's that?" And it's so I mean, and that's within my working consultant life. Not that I'm gonna I go back go back to my time as a junior doctor. Then we had things called pagers, and and that was you could turn those off, and that was it. Nobody knew where the hell you were. You were away.
Mm.
But, anyway, yes. So that's how I see leadership is a much more difficult. It's much more challenging now than it was, certainly clinical leadership, than it was in my time, in my earlier years.
Wow. Yeah. Interesting. And interesting to hear you guys conversate about that because you understand what's going on in your setup and in the
Mm.
Western world. Uh, but and what's so interesting is, for me, for example, in my country, maybe 20 years back, I would have never had the chance to do the things I've done. So it's interesting how you think over time it has progressed, that leadership has been uh, scrutinized, is now being over scrutinized because of, well, access to many different things that were never available back then. But on this side of the world, there is much more freedom now compared to what we had
Yeah,
back then.
yeah,
So, for somebody to be young and a woman and in a field that is male dominated, it would have been almost unthinkable. And it has been unthinkable. That's why we only had one female orthopedic surgeon for years
yeah,
in my country. So it's interesting how things have evolved over time, but it
yeah,
has evolved in different ways. So
Yeah.
yeah,
maybe we're heading towards where you guys are. Maybe that will come about, a few years down the line. So
yeah. I think everything goes through a natural cycle. Everything in life.
I was going to use that
um,
word.
and you are on you are on the upward curve, and
mm,
therefore gaining the benefits. And there will
mm,
become an optimum time where you're maximizing those benefits. Um,
mm,
but unfortunately, the way it's just the natural way of the world.
yeah,
Then it will start to involute, having
yeah,
evolved before that. And we're going to be careful not being, I'm not being too negative and too depressing about this because that can clearly there are massive benefits to the modern communication world,
mm,
and particularly, I mean, I can remember one of my visits to Gondar, and I came out with my two daughters who you've met, and we went trekking in the Simians, and I can remember, we were tens of miles from anywhere or anything,
mm,
and our guide gets out his smartphone, and I thought to myself, that, and he had this perfect signal and everything. So you think, well, that is it's quite extraordinary, really, because there's a village that's got no electricity, no running water, no anything. And here
mhm,
he is on a smartphone, using computer technology that, when we were growing up, wouldn't even got it would have got somebody to the moon. Um, that is, it's so it is a there are fantastic
Yeah.
benefits.
I mean, just elaborating on Richard's point, uh, cycles of just like everything's in a cycle. So there are cycles of leadership, and the control and command format of leadership
mm,
was the way it was done 20, 30 years ago. And as society has changed, society's expectations have changed, so we are a reaction to that in our newer models of leadership. We have to be inclusive, we have to listen to people, and as Richard says, well, there's more meetings, and then there's probably less action,
mm,
and so every these are choices that not necessarily we as individuals make, but these are choices that society makes,
yeah,
and then it plays out in our workplace, doesn't it?
mm,
And it's not as if one is good and one is bad. I like to think of them just being different,
mm,
and because they are different, then both models potentially have their strengths and their weaknesses.
mm,
There were weaknesses with the previous model of leadership, and there are there are undoubtedly weaknesses with our current models of leadership.
yeah, yeah. Wow, thank you for the great points and perspectives. So Richard, I know you have been mentoring the Gondar team. You both have been mentoring the Gondar team, even if you're still in the UK doing your, daily work and things like that. So, and I'm big on mentorship. So, how important is sustained mentorship in ensuring long-term success and impacts when it comes to humanitarian initiatives?
I think it's vital because it is pointless, um, just putting in change or putting in a service or putting in a piece of equipment or whatever it is, and then just walking away.
Mhm.
Uh, um, it's you might just as well have not bothered. And so I think um, you know I have roughly every 4 to 6 weeks. Bruno and I have a Google Meet meeting, and it's just a chat. It's nothing fancy about it,
Mhm.
but it's an opportunity for him because he's young. All the consultants in Gonda have all been appointed more or less roughly the same time. They're all more or less roughly the same age, and so it's quite difficult in that situation to be a leader, because your peer group are all about the same as you, and so it's just really it's good for him, I think, to have somebody with experience who you can just chat to and chew the cud, and sometimes obviously there are specific points that need to be discussed and sorted out, but more often than not it's really just get, giving him some help with the direction of travel with the department, and moral support. So,
Yeah.
and I think Albert's probably done the same. I've done various mentorship courses and training over the years, and I've been in mentor positions, both junior doctors and also for fellow consultants. Um, and sometimes it doesn't last very long because sometimes you're mentoring a newly appointed consultant, and you rapidly realise that actually they're pretty switched. They're confident, self-confident. They've got all the attributes, and they'll be fine. And sometimes they feel that actually they don't need any help from somebody else. Well, that's their that's up
Mm.
to them. So but I think for something like this, where we are trying to as the external provider, help bring on a service to bring it up to what one might, I suppose, rather arrogantly refer to as Western standards. It's not a term I particularly like, but then you've got to help support, bring people up. You can't just say
Yeah.
hi there down there. You've
Mm.
got you once and on you go.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah, yeah, mentorship is you're right. It's the most critical thing in assuring continuity and sustainability. So yeah, and I know you're doing a good work with the current head of department, and if other consultants in the departments as well. And like you said, it doesn't have to be formal. It can be informal, but being able to have somebody who has uh, had years of experience, who probably have seen the challenges you're currently facing, to guide you into dealing with certain challenges is very crucial. So thank you for that. So we'll take a quick break, and then we'll be back to the joint questions pertaining to the Lister Gondor Orthopedic Partnership. Okay, and we are back. So, um, I think Richard is trying to find a new spot. You okay,
it.
Richard?
Oh, here we go. Here we go. Yeah, yeah. I'll go back where I was. Sorry.
Okay.
Otherwise the dogs will be jumping on me.
Okay. So both of you are involved in the Leicester Gondar Orthopedic Partnership, and I just wanted you to go back and remember what was the initial vision for this partnership, and what were some of the significant challenges and the triumphs in bringing it into fruition, and how did your individual leadership styles and expertise complement each other when it comes to this partnership. Uh, I'll start with Richard.
Yeah, so you broke up a little bit in there. I think I understood it. It was just you were asking about the how the how the partnership came about and what were the aims and goals. I mean, I suppose my involvement in it came through as much between my orthopedic background, but also my Rotary background. Um, and I think when I joined this podcast, Alwyn was talking about what motivated him to get involved as humanitarian. And I suppose I, being a Rotarian, has been the one thing that has driven my desire to be involved in any form of um, uh, humanitarian work, whether that's local or international. Um, and so that was how I became involved, really, because um, uh, Lawrence Wicks, who you will know well, had visited Gonda as part of the Leicester Gonda link, which we mustn't forget about, because that's been in place for getting on for 30 years now, and which and he recognised the need there, and took Alwyn and one of our other colleagues, Chris Kershaw, out, um, and I think it was at that point that they had discussions with the then chief executive and Dr. Mensah, the head of surgery, about developing some sort of vision for developing an orthopedic trauma service. And at which point Chris and Owen came to talk to my Rotary Club about the vision of how we might go about this. And so I discussed that with my various Rotary colleagues, and we thought, well, yes, this is definitely something that we can support. I mean, as with everything in life, the initial costings weren't quite what it ended up as, but that didn't matter because we managed to get there. And I suppose that naturally drew me into the whole project as a whole. I mean, obviously the fundraising was the core element of it, but it was also the project management, which is something obviously because I've been involved in this over a number of years. That's where I felt where my place in the whole partnership was really. Whereas Alwyn and Lawrence drove the clinical element of it and the clinical need. And we mustn't forget in this Tim Beacon from MedAid International, who has also been absolutely instrumental, because without him and yourself, I mean, and without you being in Gonda, I think it would have foundered. I think it needed somebody on the ground to continue to drive the the vision with the Department of Surgery and the hospital as a whole. So I think that was the beauty about the whole partnership. Really, it was yourself, the hospital, the Black Lion in Addis, understanding the need to provide trained surgeons, Rotary raising the money, Alwyn and Lawrence and driving it clinically. So it was basically holding the whole lot together and pushing it forwards. And despite the challenges of the COVID pandemic and lockdown and everything, and then the Tigray conflict, which it would be much better if that hadn't happened. I think we would have some of the difficulties we've had may not have happened.
Yeah, I think your mic is far from you.
Is
We
that it's not?
couldn't get the
I mean,
last few words that you were saying.
right. I wonder whether my signal should be right here.
Yeah,
Can you hear
you're
me
good
now?
now. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. So what did I say? Where did I
No,
got
you
to?
mentioned most of the things that you've previously highlighted in many talks, which is, I'd say, the three key events that came together. Number one, uh, you as president of the Leicester Rotary Club were interested. You had been sufficiently enthused by people who had been to Gondar and come back. Number two, University of Gondar engaged with us, and Dr. Mensur and other were very instrumental with getting the funding for a new operating theatre department. And then thirdly, Ananya, absolutely right, you were key, because without you, it would have been, it might have happened, but it might have happened in a different way, I don't know. But you drove so much change, and you showed dedication, commitment, passion, all the things that was needed to get a very difficult project off the ground. And we're very grateful for your involvement in that phase of what we've been able to achieve in Gondar. I mean, the history of the Leicester Gondar link is interesting. I don't know too much in detail. Rich has mentioned a little bit, but it goes back to the 1990s when the British government was trying to assist many countries, and Ethiopia was one, with infrastructure and financial aid for development of not just medicine but agriculture, and other education training, and other key fields. And there was a partnership set up between Leicester Hospitals and Gondar in the 1990s, and there was a sequence of different specialists who went out from Leicester to Ethiopia, including one orthopedic surgeon, Tim Green. Um, and there were initial bits of partnership, but specifically orthopedics in Gondar was very, very basic. It was run by general surgeons, um, in the main, with no specialist input until you came along in 2019, I think it was. And we are very grateful. I say that again, that you came at just the right time. And we talked at the start of the program about opportunity and how things come together, and that was a key example of how things came together. The Rotary partnership, you coming back, and then following you, several other graduates from Black Lion, Bahadar came along, and then thirdly, of Gondar investing the money for what was very crucial, a decent, fit for purpose theatre block, which was so badly needed.
Yeah. Yeah. There were so many things that came together at the same time that obviously everybody used it to make this project successful. And I think it was used effectively. All the opportunities that were there at the time were used effectively to bring about this beautiful project. I don't want to say to completion because it's still ongoing,
Mm,
and there were so many other sub projects that came out of it. Which I want to go. I want to ask Alwyn. The Orthotic and Prosthetic Center uh, also came about from this initial orthopedic partnership. So, and they're doing great work. And we talked about marginalized people earlier.
yeah.
Uh, so, tell me about that. How does that make you feel to
Yeah.
see?
Do you know, I ought to leave that question for Richard, because that has a huge Rotary badge on it,
Mhm.
and we would not have achieved it without, again, Rotary international support. But the bit that I've been involved in is to transform the very basics of orthopedics into something more substantial, taking it to the next level. Now, I mean, we're three of us are orthopedic surgeons, and some of our audience might not appreciate this, but orthopedics is become tremendously subspecialized. So there are people who specialize in spine surgery, people who specialize in hand surgery, etc. And that is Gondar's next challenge, is to get to the subspecialization. And very pleased to say that we are making some inroads into that. So, for instance, we have Dr. Mohammed Yusuf, who's going off to Ganga hospital in Coimbatore, South India, for a surgery in hand surgery, sorry, fellowship in hand surgery. I mean, some of the injuries that we've seen and he's shared with us of very severe uh, digits lost, hands mutilated. There is no specialized hand surgery outside Addis, and even in Addis, I gather there are literally two or three specialists, no more. But for Dr. Yusuf to go to Ganga, come back as a fully trained hand surgeon would be amazing, because that means outside Addis, 600 kilometers from the capital, there will be someone else who can repair, um, very complex hand injuries, and who can then train the next generation of subspecialists in hand surgery. That's what we want. Is Richard often uses the analogy that it's not about fishing for people, but it's teaching people how to fish, because then they can feed themselves for a lifetime. And that's absolutely what we want to do, is to get people who are subspecialists with the additional skills, who can then serve not just their city but the whole of Ethiopia by sharing those skills with surgeons around. So Dr. Yusuf is one project. We very grateful again to ADFA and your input for sending Dr. I forget his name now, who went to Ganga for.
Almao and Gallup.
Sorry.
Almao and Gallup.
Almao, yes, Almao,
Um,
Almao, who again, does some fantastic work. So if you had a acetabulum or a pelvic fracture, the best you'd get was either a bed for, I don't know, 8 weeks, and then you'd be discharged home, or best case scenario, you get put in the back of a taxi and they drive you 600 kilometers. Imagine that, to Addis for a pelvic fracture fixation. I mean, I can't even imagine how that must have been for a patient in the back of a taxi to go that far. But for I've seen Almao's amazing work putting screws into the pelvis and so on, and it means that there are some people now getting tremendously good treatment in Gondar, in Amhara, whereas 3 years ago that just wouldn't have been available.
Yeah.
And then the other person that we're trying to support is Dr. Brillo himself, who's the head of the department, and we are in communication with a department in Kolkata who have offered him a fellowship in trauma and also arthroplasty, which there is also a need. And I know that arthroplasty is seen as a complicated, expensive service, but there will be people who need arthroplasty in Gondar who otherwise just haven't got access to it. And it's a very complex service to set up because of the risk of infection, the risk of additional services, support services, implant delivery, etc., etc. For which we have several concerns. But yes, we are getting to that point where we think we can now take Gondar to the next level of not just being a functioning county or district hospital, but we truly want to make it a university hospital, which means that it is a institution which can then roll out the skills to the rest of the country. And I think
Yeah.
the next phase of our project is very exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. All good points. Obviously, that department has come a long way from, not existing to now, where you have subspecialists and a residency program. And I think they graduated their first batch maybe a year back or so.
yeah, yeah,
So it's very exciting to see the huge progress. And it was the input of so many people, visionary people, good people, and kind people like you and Lawrence, and so many people involved with the Leicester Gondar Orthopedic Partnership, Australian Doctors for Africa, the AO Alliance, the institution itself, the University of Gondar, the Amhara Regional Health Bureau. Just so many people, partners have come together to make this happen. So this partnership really exemplifies a very strong international collaboration. And what lessons have you guys learned about fostering effective partnerships, especially when it comes to uh, different healthcare systems and different cultures, in some ways kind of opposites? And what do you believe are the most critical elements for the success of such collaboration?
Should I go? To go?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I think the key thing, and going back to my C's, is understanding what uh, the actual needs are of the population you're trying to help, rather than your perception of what they need.
Mm.
And I think that one of the things that we often see uh, in the in African countries generally is some of the wealthier nations, and I won't mention any names, but and wealthy benefactors, they come in thinking, oh, you need this, and therefore we will provide this, when actually it's completely inappropriate. And it may be hugely expensive and wonderful. A classic example of this in Gonda is the autoclave. So another Rotary Club in the US, very very well-meaning, put in 2 autoclaves in the maternity units there, which were the all singing, all dancing, all bells and whistles, but very rapidly developed problems, and the facilities available to fix them. And so the Rotary Club came to me and said, well, how can we go about this? So I then put them in touch with Tim. And so they now got 2 new autoclaves, which they've raised funds for, which are much more, I don't want to use the term basic because that suggests that they're not fit for purpose, but they are, they are low maintenance, highly effective, do the job, and therefore much more likely to be a sustainable solution.
Mm.
So that's I would use that as it's that necessity to actually visit, understand what the actual needs of the population you're about to serve are, rather than going in and looking at it from the perspective of a fully developed healthcare system.
Yeah, yeah, that's an incredible point, because it's very important. Help has to be targeted, but it should be
Yes.
targeted based on need, like you said, and not just the what's available for the donor to donate, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I know you're not just saying that, because I myself had been to Leicester and been to the Maid Aid, warehouse, and handpicked the stuff that went into the Gondar orthopedic OR. So you do live by the belief you stand for. So it's very important, and that is the main thing that made the project so successful. Um, Throughout this process, I'm sure there were many challenges and disappointments along the way, but you got to travel back and forth from the UK to Ethiopia, and during all this time, has there been any unforgettable, experiences that have come about because of this work, that has changed your view of leadership?
Um, ah, Tricky one. I mean, I suppose you will recall back in March 2020, just before lockdown, when we finally got to unpack all the stuff from the container and get it all out and assemble it, and um, have all you guys there, people from the university, um, Tim, Sarah, my scrub nurse, and Jeremy. Um, to have all that together and to be able to see the results of everything we've been trying to do, and then it really finally felt, well, this is, we now finally feel we can see the finishing line in process. And I think that just confirmed to me that if you keep at it, because as you well know, there were many frustrations along the way, everything took, well, probably a year, 18 months, much longer than it would should have done. The costs went up. We had obviously the issues around the contractors who were doing the work on the building. Um, the doubts about whether, there was times when it wasn't clear necessarily that we were going to get the support from the Black Lion, um, and there were times I thought, we're not going to do this. Um, but it was, yeah, having got to that point, we really felt, yes, we're on our way. Um, so I think it wasn't so much it didn't change my views of leadership. It just, I think it just um, was a confirmation of our aspirations generally, and certainly my personal ones. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
You asked Alwyn about the Jaipur Limb Centre, so I just
Yes, you can go
I
back
would,
to
I
that,
would like,
please.
so that there was an absolute classic example of chance conversation. So I was at a Rotary meeting, convention, and we have a thing called the uh, friendship friendship house, and basically it's lots of people have stalls up, and I just happened to be wandering down these stalls, and I came across this Jaipur Limb stall, with being manned by Roger White, and so I got chatting and said, well, tell me about Jaipur Limb, and basically for those, and I'm sure your listeners won't know what Jaipur Limb is, but basically in Jaipur in India, a doctor there set up a number of years ago a very basic process for manufacturing lower limb prostheses for amputees at a very, very cheap cost. And he rolled out that process to other centres, and Rotary International took this on as something that they could support. And so throughout various other countries in Africa, they've been doing setting up one or two Jaipur Limb. And I thought, well, this is a perfect opportunity because, again, it's another area of huge need within Ethiopia. Yes, there's the ICRC centre and the Leonard Cheshire, but there was nothing around Gonda at all. Um, and this is a perfect opportunity to put it alongside the orthopedic trauma centre we created. So I said to Roger, look, why don't you join in with us? Put it in Gonda. We were lucky enough to have a benefactor from the US who was put up the money for the actual building, because Rotary doesn't normally fund buildings themselves, just equipment. Um, and again, this was all through the lockdown and the conflict, etc. So everything's taken a very long time. But eventually, in the latter part of last year, I got it open, and the six technicians they've employed are all fantastic. I met them when we were out there in February, and they're so dedicated and so enthusiastic. They get paid absolutely nothing. They've all come from one. I think is a woodworker by background. One's an electrician. They had nothing to do with healthcare at all.
Yeah.
But they just are so dedicated to their work. And when I was out in February, I think they'd already, in November and February, over 3 months, had fitted over 50 lower limb implants at a very reasonable cost. And the day I was there was a chap who was a farmer from out in the country, who'd lost his leg in, I think it was either the civil war with Mengistu or the Eritrean war, many years ago, and he'd been going on crutches ever since. And there he was getting within 48 hours, he was walking out with a new lower limb prosthesis. Now, for a fraction of the cost that would cost in UK or any other developers. So that, to my mind, was just wonderful.
Yeah, it just brings so much joy to my heart to see how far the orthopedic care came along in Gondar, because orthetics and prostheses are quite a crucial part of the orthopedic service. And as you know, we have a very young population that suffers trauma. So having having your limb amputated so young and still not being able to have access to prosthesis, that's just double whammy. It's very very unfortunate and very, quite a horrible thing to experience. But this partnership that started out as an orthopedic partnership, which came from just building a theater and equipping it, became evolved into this whole other bigger project that is going to impact is impacting and is going to continue impacting many people in the future. I know you're tired. You just came back from a flight, and this is going to be my last question. So, what final message would you like to share with our audience about the power of, everyday leadership and its role in making a difference, whether it's in healthcare, humanitarian, or other fields?
Well, I think the key message is if you feel in yourself that you have the qualities to be a leader, then go for it, because it's seen so negatively in this day and age, and we are desperately short of good leadership politically and in all sorts of areas. And if we're not careful, if we don't enhance, if we don't encourage and enhance uh, those individuals who do have leadership potential, then we're going to very rapidly go down the tubes. And when you're looking at projects like this, and the partnership, um, it makes, it's made so much difference to millions of people, or potentially for millions of people. And I just, well, you just got to do it. I can't say any more than that.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much, Richard. I appreciate you for coming here and sharing your thoughts and your experiences, your expertise, and such wonderful points. I hope that the audience have you know learned from. And Alwyn had to leave for another meeting, so I appreciate you both, and I hope you keep doing the great work you're doing with Gondor and hopefully beyond that. And yeah, it was great seeing you again. Keep in touch. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Ananya, and it's been a great pleasure.
All
And
right.
all the best to you, and obviously all the. I hope some of the Gonda surgeons have been watching this. So I hope they've enjoyed it.
Yes, for
Yeah.
sure. All right.
All right.
Have a good one,
Okay.
Richard. Bye bye.
Cheers, then. Thanks very much. Okay. Right. Bye bye.